opportunities for individuals to get the help they need while allowing for rehabilitation and reintegration of our communities and create safer communities as a result. I urge all members to support this important bill. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
I think we'll now interrupt, and the honourable member for West Vancouver, Sunshine Coast, Sea to Sky Country will have 5 minutes for questions and comments when the House next gets back to debate on the question. But for now, we'll start with statements by members. Déclaration de député. Premièrement, firstly, honourable member for Surrey Newton.
Waheguru Ji Ka Khalsa, Waheguru Ji Ki Fateh. Mr. Speaker, I rise today to celebrate Vaisakhi, Khalsa Day and Sikh Heritage Month. Khalsa Day and Vaisakhi is very important date for Sikhs who pay tribute to the birth of Khalsa and harvest season respectively. April is also recognized as Sikh Heritage Month in Canada, where the contributions and accomplishments of Sikh pioneers are celebrated for the way that they have positively impacted our country. As we emerge from COVID-19 pandemic, Sikh values of hope, universality, rebirth, renewal, goodwill, and compassion towards others are principles we can all embrace. Mr. Speaker, I want to wish everyone celebrating a very happy Vaisakhi and very happy Khalsa Day.
Honourable member for Fort McMurray, Cold Lake.
Mr. Speaker, for too long, Alberta's ethical oil and gas sector has been mislabeled as being dirty and has been singled out as the only sector contributing to climate change and environmental impacts, while foreign oil and gas gets a free pass. Critics claim that we need to put an end to Alberta oil and gas while ignoring the reality that more harm is done to the environment by polluting the water we drink and contaminating the fish and lobster we consume. Dozens of municipalities across Canada, such as Montreal and Quebec City, continue to dump raw sewage and untreated wastewater into our nation's waterways. It is time we get serious about protecting the environment by protecting our waterways and stopping this outdated practice of dumping human waste into the ecosystem. Let's stop the cycle of abuse. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Member for Oakville North, Burlington.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. April is Organ Donation Awareness Month. Despite our efforts, registration rates across Canada are dismal. In Ontario, there are over 1,500 people waiting for a life-saving organ transplant. This is their only treatment option, and every 3 days someone will die because they did not get their transplant in time. One donor can save up to 8 lives through organ donation and enhance the lives of up to 75 people through the gift of tissue. Age alone does not disqualify someone from becoming a donor. The oldest organ donor was over 90 and the oldest tissue donor was over 100. There's always the potential to be a donor, and it should not stop someone from registering. Anyone over the age of 16 can register. I encourage residents of my riding and across Canada to discuss their intentions with their family and go to beadonor.ca to register. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
The Honourable Member for Rivière-des-Mille-Îles. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I rise today to commemorate our participation, the participation of Quebecers in one of the most momentous military episodes in the First World War, that is, the Battle of Vimy Ridge, which happened from April 9th to 12th, 1917. It was a stunning victory, but which took a tragic human toll to the tune of 3,598 victims in Canada. I would like to underscore the exceptional participation of French Canadians. As the only French language unit in the whole British Army, the 22nd Battalion had to wage, as in the words of historian Cal Pépin, 2 battles. On the one hand, against the German enemy, and on the other hand, to obtain recognition of its bravery and respect from all. To French and English Canadians who fought at Vimy, we say thank you for your service. The Honourable Member for Hochelaga. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. In Hochelaga, we have a strong community of artists and creators who feed our soul and our minds through their gaze on society. Today, I would like to pay tribute to visual artists in our riding who have uplifted us thanks to their creation during this pandemic. I'm thinking of Garbage Beauty, who writes militant poetry on garbage containers, thereby transforming them into works of art. And Louise Beaupré-Lincourt, who painted one watercolor a day since the beginning of the pandemic for a total of 372 works of art that illustrate Hochelaga. Our government directly supports the arts sector with close to $1 million, especially through the insurance of $1 million for cinema and other funding. And if we include the CERB and other emergency wage benefits, we're talking about a great deal of funding for artists across the country, and especially thank you to artists.
For Calgary Skyview.
Mr. Speaker, today Sikhs around the world are celebrating the creation of Khalsa Panth, known as Vaisakhi, by the 10th Guru. The Khalsa Panth was a confederation of sovereign groups committed to a social justice model, humanism, and enhancing diversity. It was an early participatory democracy that employed dialogue and reasoned argumentation for consensus building. The principles taught in the Khalsa are principles that we, Sikhs, continue to live by. As we saw throughout this pandemic in my own community and across Canada, Sikhs opening their kitchens to ensure that our frontline workers had access to food and basic needs during the pandemic, and that those most vulnerable were not forgotten and were helped. From the Conservative Party of Canada, we wish everybody celebrating a very happy Vaisakhi. Conservative Party ਵੱਲੋਂ ਆਪ ਸਾਰਿਆਂ ਨੂੰ ਵਿਸਾਖੀ ਦੀਆਂ ਲੱਖ-ਲੱਖ ਵਧਾਈਆਂ. Thank you.
The Honourable Member for Richmond Hill.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. As you know, April is Oral Health Month, and from April 4th to 10th, in recognition of the National Dental Hygienist Week, I would like to recognize someone very dear to me. As a restorative dental hygienist, my wife, Homera, is one of the countless frontline health workers who has bravely served Canadians during the COVID-19 pandemic. For over 25 years, she's been passionate about her profession and the patients that she's taking care of. Back in June 2020, when healthcare restrictions were relaxed, Homera quickly gowned up and was one of the first people back in the office and persevered through every lockdown to support her colleagues and to attend to her patients' complex oral health needs. I'm so proud of Homera and grateful to her and all of the frontline workers across Canada who have worked tirelessly through the pandemic despite the grave risk. Let us take a moment to acknowledge all the dental hygienists who played an important role in taking care of our oral health. Homera, I love you. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
The Honourable Member for Surrey Centre.
Mr. Speaker, today is a day to celebrate, reflect, and observe. Sikhs across Canada are celebrating Vaisakhi, a celebration of the creation of the Khalsa and the Sikh Articles of Faith. On this day and for the entire month of April, we're also celebrating Sikh Heritage Month and the accomplishments and contributions of Sikh Canadians across the country. Today, Muslim Canadians will begin a month of fasting, feasts, and reflection as they observe Ramadan, one of the most sacred times in Islam. And for our Hindu Canadian friends, today is the beginning of Chaitra Navratri, a 9-day celebration remembering the goddess Durga and praying for her protection and for happiness. As a nation of diversity and inclusion, we are fortunate and blessed to be able to celebrate our traditions and faiths side by side in peace and harmony as we celebrate this year. Make sure we nurture these cherished Canadian values. And let's remember to celebrate safely. Vaisakhi dia lakh lakh vadaiyan, Ramadan Mubarak, and Happy Navratri.
The Honourable Member for Richmond Centre.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. COVID-19 has brought an unspeakable amount of suffering, and I'm offering my sympathies to those who have been affected. We tend to dwell on the negatives, but instead...
If I can interrupt the member, if she can adjust her, we're having a hard time hearing. Maybe it's where the microphone is. Want to make sure everybody hears every word. Maybe start over from the beginning.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, COVID-19 has brought an unspeakable amount of suffering, and I offer my sympathies to those who have been affected. We tend to dwell on the negatives, but instead let us reflect on the positives. My home city of Richmond has consistently posted the lowest per capita COVID case numbers in Metro Vancouver. However, the numbers do not tell the whole story. The story is truly about the vast majority of Richmondites taking responsibility of their health and keeping safe while continuing to function during this terrible pandemic. Anxiety in these times is high, but we are resilient, adaptive, and considerate of others. This speaks to our community as we weather the COVID storm. Just like all storms, Mr. Speaker, this one will pass, and Richmond will lead the way. Thank you.
L'honorable député.
The Honourable Member for Sherbrooke. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. On Friday, accompanied by my colleagues, the President of the Treasury Board and the Member for Brome-Missisquoi, I had the pleasure of taking a virtual tour of the IBM Canada plant in Bromont. It was a perfect opportunity to discuss the development of new technologies in Quebec and to see how cooperation between the University of Sherbrooke and IBM Canada will lead to economic spin-offs for the region and trigger innovative research projects for the students. Sherbrooke University is recognized for its research into innovative technology, as witnessed by the $11 million invested by our government in this area. I would like to congratulate Mr. Cossette and Mr. Aimé of University of Sherbrooke for their devotion and leadership. Thanks to their work, they are reaffirming University of Sherbrooke's leadership in the area of technological innovation, and their partnership with IBM shows that the know-how of our region in developing technologies of tomorrow. Thank you.
For Battle River, Crowfoot.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Canadians are ready for a plan forward. Yet only weeks ago, the Liberals not only voted against a Conservative motion to provide a plan to permanently and safely reopen Canada based on science, they played politics, blamed the provinces, fear-mongered, and are doing everything they can to cover up their failures and scandals. Canada deserves better. Canadians deserve a plan, and that's what Conservatives are offering. We have a 5-point plan that will address the challenges we face, bring back ethical governance, unleash the potential of our nation, and ensure we recover from global challenges and Liberal failures. The contrast is clear. While the Liberals plan to reimagine our economy based on flimsy ideology and self-interest, Conservatives will secure our future.
Member for Regina Louvain.
Yesterday, the Minister of Economic Development had the audacity to release an editorial criticizing the Conservatives of playing political games. The arrogance of this minister and the entire Liberal cabinet is out of control. Between their stalling tactics and refusal to show up to committee meetings, they clearly have no respect for the parliamentary process. It is pretty rich for the minister to state that we are holding up legislation when they actually shut down Parliament, which resulted in wiping out pre-pandemic pieces of legislation. Even when the opposition brings up reasonable improvements to flawed Liberal legislation, it is treated as a political game. We agree that there has to be help for businesses and individuals across Canada. Where we disagree is how to achieve that mandate. We need a safe plan to reopen the economy, a plan to open the borders, and a plan to get Canadians back to work. Only the Conservative recovery plan will secure the future for all Canadians, not just Liberal insiders like the Minister of Economic Development's boyfriend.
The Honourable Member for St. John's East.
What?
Mr. Speaker, last week, after widespread protests from countless communities in Newfoundland and Labrador, Marine Atlantic ferry services rolled back fare increases that have been implemented on April 1st. People are worried about the cost of living, and the tourism industry is holding out hope that they will be able to rebuild.
I just want to interrupt the Honourable Member. I noticed the Honourable Member for Sandwich Gulf Islands, probably for the same reason I'm getting up. The camera is not working, or there's a piece of paper over the Honourable Member's camera. Maybe what we'll do is we'll go to the next person and then come. Oh, he's back. He's with us. I'll let him. Well, how about if we start right from the beginning? This way, nothing will be hidden.
That'd be great.
Very good.
Mr. Speaker, last week, after widespread protests from towns and communities in Newfoundland and Labrador, Marine Atlantic ferry services rolled back fare increases that had been implemented on April 1st. People are worried about the cost of living, and the tourism industry is holding out hope that they'll be able to rebuild as the pandemic eases. While it's a welcome break from relentless fare increases under a cost recovery model that even the Prime Minister called unreasonable in 2015, this does nothing to fix the underlying problem. This vital service was constitutionally mandated when Newfoundland and Labrador joined as a province with Canada over 70 years ago, but the cost recovery model discourages travellers and visitors, increases food prices and cost of living, and hurts businesses. We need an affordable ferry service between Newfoundland and Labrador and Nova Scotia, despite the promise by the Prime Minister and having 7 and then 6 of 7 Liberal MPs from the province. 6 years later, nothing has changed. This needs to be fixed.
The Honourable Member, l'Honourable Député de...
The Honourable Member for Saint-Hyacinthe-Bagotte. Mr. Speaker, I'd like to pay tribute to a true pillar of the city of Saint-Hyacinthe. Mr. François Grisé died 4 days ago. He was much more than a businessman. He was a mentor for all business people in my region, and especially those downtown. We'll remember from him that he led the well-known microbrewery Le Bilboquet, when well before Quebec was an expert in that area. He also co-founded the excellent restaurant L'Espiègle, and he was chair of the downtown SDC. And he strongly supported the startup of the Mairewa Café. In addition, he volunteered for a number of community organizations. But more than that, we'll remember a generous person who is always there for his fellow citizens. Our community will miss him, but we can still feel his presence today in downtown Saint-Hyacinthe. On behalf of the Bloc Québécois, I offer my sincere condolences to the family and loved ones of François Grisé. Thank you.
The Honourable Member for Kildonan St. Paul.
Conservatives stand firmly with Canadian women who have been let down by this Prime Minister and the Liberal government. 1.5 million women lost their jobs in the first 2 months of the COVID crisis, and all economic gains made by women over my lifetime have been completely lost during the tenure of this Prime Minister. We know that 500,000 women are still out of work, and that young women have suffered 3 times as many job losses than young men. And yet the Liberal government has yet to deliver a plan to Canadians to get our country safely back to work. Our Conservative leader is the first and only leader to date to put forward a plan to get Canada back on track. We will secure jobs, secure accountability to prevent future Liberal scandals, secure mental health to improve Canadians' well-being, secure Canada with a domestic supply of vaccines and PPE, and secure our economy by responsibly balancing the books over a 10-year period. Women, mothers, and families deserve no less, Mr. Speaker.
The Honourable Member for Bay of Quinte.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. April is Oral Health Month in Canada. As we all continue to do our parts to keep our communities healthy through the pandemic, we must also remember that maintaining our well-being includes protecting our oral health and hygiene. It is why I'm pleased to recognize the dental hygienist community in my riding and beyond. Last week, from April 4th to April 10th, was National Dental Hygienist Week. Our dental hygienists know best that taking care of our mouths, teeth, and gums benefit our overall well-being. This year, they were creative in taking the celebrations online to spread their oral health and total health message far and wide. For the dental hygienist community in my riding of the Bay of Quinte, and for all its members across the country, we celebrate the professionals who help us smile brightly every day. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Oral questions. Question orale. The Honourable Leader of the Opposition.
Mr. Speaker, the Prime Minister made CNN last night. The headline, Canada's vaccine shortage. Jake Tapper told viewers around the world that the Canadian government had failed. Will the Prime Minister admit that his failure to secure sufficient vaccines is leading to a catastrophic third wave?
Right Honourable Prime Minister.
Mr. Speaker, it's important that we stay grounded in the facts in these conversations. Canada is actually third in the G20 in terms of vaccines delivered to people. And we're going to continue to work even harder to get more vaccines into Canada and into arms as quickly as possible. That's what this government's focus is. At the same time, we are supporting the provinces and families and business owners so that we can do the restrictions necessary to get through this third wave. We need to get people vaccinated, and we need to get the caseloads down before we're going to start easing restrictions, and that's what we're focused on.
Honourable Leader of the Opposition.
Mr. Speaker, it looks like the Prime Minister needs to sit down with Jake Tapper, because for months the Liberal government's answer to questions about their slow pandemic response has been to compare themselves to the United States. Well, Canada has now passed the United States in per capita number of new COVID cases every day. How many Canadians are now being infected with COVID-19 variants because of this government's slow and confused rollout of vaccines?
Honourable Prime Minister.
Mr. Speaker, once again, I think it's really important that we work from facts and understanding of the science around things. We know, for example, that the UK is ahead of just about everybody else on vaccinations, and yet they maintain very strong restrictions and are facing a very serious third wave. Vaccinations on their own are not enough to keep us safe. We need to engage in the right kinds of behaviours, do things that the Conservatives aren't always good at, like wearing masks, keeping distances, and obeying public health rules.
The Honourable Leader of the Opposition.
Mr. Speaker, facts and science. Well, here's a quote for the Prime Minister. Quote, because of the current situation in Canada, even fully vaccinated travellers are at risk, end quote. The risk that the Centre for Disease Control is referring to is the massive spread of COVID-19 variants in Canada because of the slow vaccination rates guaranteed by this Prime Minister. Avoid all travel, Mr. Speaker, is a warning usually reserved for dictatorships. It's now being applied to Canada. Since the Prime Minister can't point to the US for bad comparisons anymore, who is he going to blame for his vaccine failures?
Right Honourable Prime Minister.
Mr. Speaker, we see consistently the Conservatives never let the facts get in the way of a political attack. The reality is that CDC recommendation dates from March. Last March, a year ago, Mr. Speaker, recommending that people not travel to Canada or just about any other country in the outside the United States. This is what we've had to work with as a world, limiting travel, protecting our citizens, and getting them vaccinated. Every step of the way, this government has grounded itself in facts and science, as opposed to Conservatives who prefer political arguments and making stuff up.
Hear, hear. Honourable Leader of the Opposition.
Monsieur le Président.
Mr. Speaker, yesterday evening, the Prime Minister appeared on CNN. The title was "A Vaccine Shortage in Canada." The journalist told the entire world that it's a real failure by the Canadian government. Will the Prime Minister admit that his failure with the vaccines has led to a catastrophic third wave? The Right Honourable Prime Minister. Once again, Mr. Speaker, the Conservatives must consider the facts and reality. We promised that we would deliver 6 million doses of vaccines before the end of March, and we exceeded this measure. Now we're at more than 11 million doses delivered to Canadians just a few weeks later. We are working day and night in order to have more vaccines for Canadians. At the same time, we must protect ourselves and follow recommendations by public health authorities to lower case counts and protect others. The Honourable Leader of the Opposition. Mr. Speaker, Quebec is vaccinating a lot of people. To keep that capacity, Quebec needs more doses. Yesterday, I asked the Prime Minister if there would be other delays in deliveries of vaccines, and he assured me no. Today, he announces that there will be a delay in the delivery of the Moderna vaccine. What happened in less than 24 hours for the Prime Minister to change the answer? The Right Honourable Prime Minister. Mr. Speaker, it's very troubling that in a conversation that I had directly with the Leader of the Opposition, and he is not telling the truth about what I said. I explained that we would receive 44 million doses 44 million doses before the end of June, and that we would get Pfizer regularly, and that in fact we would always see some little delays of a day or two from Moderna. But the reality is that we are working extremely hard, and the leader of the opposition is preferring to make personal and political attacks without any foundation. It's unfortunate. The honourable member for Beloeil-Chambly. Mr. Speaker, I am very happy in this House to be able to offer congratulations to Maxime Laporte, who defended Quebec democracy, and Joseph Facal, who passed a bill in the National Assembly of Quebec. The Quebec court has just validated this bill 99. We must recognize and highlight it. Can the Prime Minister, will he accept, rather, the decision of the Quebec Court of Appeal, or will he appeal it? That is, the Quebec Court's decision. The Right Honourable Prime Minister. Mr. Speaker, since the beginning of the pandemic and since the beginning of our government, we have always worked hand in hand with the provinces and our partners in the provinces. We have always respected the processes in place and the provincial jurisdiction. We will continue to work hand in hand with Quebec to deliver for Quebecers, protect Quebecers and all Canadians, and that is what we will continue to do. The honourable member for Beloeil-Chambly. I understood nothing, but I'm convinced it was a good answer. I think that the Minister of Justice said that the federal government did not intend to challenge the decision of the Court of Appeal. However, we are to understand that Bill 99 is the alleged law on clarity, and the alleged law on referendum clarity are incompatible. It's one or the other. There can only be one. So if the government does not challenge, will the Prime Minister then repeal this so-called clarity bill? The Right Honourable Prime Minister. We are in the middle of a third wave, a very worrying third wave. We're all working together in order to try to help Canadians and to respond to their concerns, and the Bloc cannot prevent itself from raising a debate about sovereignty. Mr. Speaker, our priority now and for the coming months is to deliver for Canadians, to be there for Quebecers, and meet their priorities, not the political priorities of the Bloc to quarrel. The honourable member for Burnaby South.
Merci, Monsieur le Président.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. The number of individuals who have been hospitalized or in acute care is increasing in Quebec and across the country. We are in an urgent crisis caused by COVID-19 variants. We are losing the race against the variants. So my question to the Prime Minister is this. What is his plan to vaccinate everyone as quickly as possible? The Right Honourable Prime Minister. Mr. Speaker, we are working and have been working on this plan since last summer. It was about negotiating and signing contracts with more vaccine producers than other countries, ensuring more doses for Canadians than other countries so that we could accelerate vaccinations. And we have seen that this is succeeding. We are seeing the number of Canadians who are being vaccinated increasing. We have received 11 million doses of vaccines since the beginning. 5 million just in recent weeks. We will continue to increase the number of vaccinations in cooperation with the provinces and territories.
Burnaby South. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. We are in the middle of a third wave of COVID-19 that is hitting us hard. We're seeing a record number of cases in Ontario, and we are losing the race against the variants. When I asked this question or raised this issue yesterday, the Minister of Health said with pride that it was the federal government sending the tents to the field hospitals in Ontario. That is not a mark of pride. That is a sign of failure. Things should never have got to this point. So my question is clear. When will the Prime Minister start real action, starting with immediately improving paid sick leave, and stop making excuses? Yes.
Honourable Prime Minister.
Mr. Speaker, we approved paid sick leave many, many months ago, and it would be excellent for the leader of the NDP to acknowledge that. And of course, there is more that can be done, and we look forward to working with provinces and territories as they move forward on boosts to paid sick leave. But we will continue to be there for Canadians. We made a simple promise from the very beginning that we would have people's backs as much as it took, as long as it took. And that's exactly what we're doing. We're continuing to be there to support provinces and territories, to support families, workers, and small businesses, and we will continue to.
Honourable Member for Calgary Nose Hill.
Moments ago, the Public Health Agency of Canada confirmed that an individual living in Canada experienced rare blood clotting following immunization with the AstraZeneca vaccine. Yesterday, Australia announced that they are suspending use of the AstraZeneca vaccine following new guidance from European regulators. Will the advice on AstraZeneca usage be changed in Canada, and why or why not?
Honourable Minister.
Are we having a... Okay.
Mr. Speaker, the minister has a connection issue at present, and we'll come back to this as soon as possible.
Okay, the honourable member for Calgary Nose Hill. I'll just
Speaker,
interrupt
I
for a
have
moment.
Is there a parliamentary secretary available?
I'll just ask if we want to come back and ask both questions at the same time once a technical issue is resolved.
Sorry, Mr. Speaker?
I think she's available.
Okay, you're back. How about if we start right from the top, the honourable member for Calgary Nose Hill, if you want to ask your question over, and we'll start from the beginning.
Moments ago, the Public Health Agency of Canada confirmed that an individual living in Canada experienced rare blood clotting following immunization with the AstraZeneca vaccine. Yesterday, Australia announced that they are suspending use of the AstraZeneca vaccine following new guidance from European regulators. Will the advice on AstraZeneca usage be changed in Canada, and why or why not?
Honourable Minister.
Well, thank you very much, Mr. Speaker, and I apologize for the technical issues. As the member opposite knows, all vaccines approved for use in Canada undergo routine and scrutinous attention. All adverse effects are reported through Health Canada, and Health Canada monitors that data closely and will not hesitate to change its licensing for use in Canada should there be any risk to Canadians.
The honourable member for Calgary Nose Hill.
I appreciate that, Mr. Speaker. However, that's not the question that I asked. There were reports today that an individual living in Canada experienced rare blood clotting following immunization with the AstraZeneca vaccine. Other countries, including Australia, have announced that they are suspending use. Given this information, has the minister consulted with her officials, and does she anticipate that advice on AstraZeneca usage will be changed? Why or why not? And if so, when will she be providing that advice publicly?
The Honourable Minister.
Mr. Speaker, surely the member opposite is not trying to scare Canadians and imply that Health Canada would not be doing an extremely thorough job, as they always do with any medication or vaccine license for use in Canada. In fact, Health Canada has been monitoring AstraZeneca as well as all of the other vaccines in use for Canadians, and works closely with provinces and territories to determine any changes that are necessary. These vaccines are saving lives and stopping the spread. Isn't that the goal that the member opposite is wanting as well?
The honourable member for Chicoutimi-Le-Fjord. Mr. Speaker, yesterday in the Standing Committee on Defence, the Liberals passed a motion with the support of the Bloc to put an end on the cover-up by Justin Trudeau of the sexual misconduct in the Canadian Armed Forces. We know that there are still key witnesses that need to testify. What's most surprising is the support of the Bloc. They sold their support for a piece of bread. What I want to know, Mr. Speaker, is what did the Liberals give them in exchange for this shameful pact? Before we go to the minister, I would remind members that when they ask a question in the House, They do not use the name of an MP. They use either the riding name or the title of the individual in question. The Honourable Minister. Mr. Speaker, my colleague knows full well that committees make their own decisions, and I would object to what he has just said because I think it's quite insulting. I would defend my Bloc colleagues that they could have been bought. It's dishonorable from my Conservative colleague to make that statement. The committee members made a decision that they wanted to make. They are masters of their own decision, and that's what they did, and my colleague should respect that. The Honourable Member for Chicoutimi-Le-Fjord. Mr. Speaker, the way this so-called feminist Prime Minister is handling this says a lot about Liberal priorities when it comes to women. We have already seen the cavalier way he acted towards two of his former MPs. I cannot believe that a majority of the House are in favor of hindering the work of parliamentarians on an issue affecting the security of our brave soldiers. What message is that sending to women who are bravely serving in our military? The Honourable Minister.
Our government respects the work done by our colleagues at the committee. In fact, I worked with the National Defence Committee on this matter quite extensively. I appeared at the committee 3 times on this study alone, Mr. Speaker, and for more than 6 hours. I repeatedly stated that each of these appearances, that many times in the House of Commons, that our government and me personally will not stand for any type of sexual misconduct, and that we will take further action. And I look forward to the recommendations provided by the committee once the study is completed. Thank you.
The Honourable Member for Selkirk Interlake Eastman.
Well, that's what you call part of the Liberal cover-up. Mr. Speaker, media are reporting the Defence Minister was appeasing China when he threatened to yank funding from the Halifax Security Forum if organizers didn't torpedo the John McCain Award to Miss Tsai Ing-wen, the President of Taiwan. John McCain's daughter, Megan, called it absolutely pathetic, describing this Liberal government as a bunch of cowards condoning Chinese genocide. Why is the Defence Minister taking his marching orders from the communist regime in Beijing instead of standing up for democracy, human rights, and strong female world leaders?
The Honourable Minister.
Mr. Speaker, the assertions that the member is making couldn't be further from the truth, Mr. Speaker. The Halifax International Security Forum is an independent organization, and they make their own decisions on this matter. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Just seen. The Honourable Member for Selkirk Interlake Eastman.
Well, Mr. Speaker, we know that this minister and this government could be given an award for having the most phony feminist credentials. David Mulrooney, Canada's former ambassador to China, said the Liberals' move was a national disgrace, and Canada's feminist foreign policy has no room for one of the most courageous, principled, and seriously threatened women on the planet. Will the Defence Minister guarantee the Halifax Security Forum will get to keep its funding, and will he support bestowing the John McCain Award to the President of Taiwan?
The Honourable Minister.
Mr. Speaker, as I stated from the beginning, the Halifax International Security Forum is an independent organization, and they make their own decisions on where the awards need to go. We have supported, National Defence has supported the International Security Forum in Halifax for the last 10 years, Mr. Speaker, and once a request is made, it will be considered. Thank you.
The Honourable Member for Jonquière. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Quebec forests are renewable resources with significant economic, energy, and environmental potential. Maximizing this potential could create 16,000 jobs in Quebec while reducing greenhouse gas emissions, and yet the federal government is only investing crumbs, $71 million per year. That's nothing if I compare to the $24 billion that have been invested since 2017 in fossil fuels. At the convention, the Liberals voted to continue these subsidies to fossil fuels rather than redirecting that money to greener energies. Will the government put an end to this oil frenzy and invest in Quebec forests? The Honourable Minister.
Monsieur le Président.
Mr. Speaker, we support the forestry sector across the country. In Quebec, we have invested in a forestry innovation program which supports research, development, and technology transfer throughout the sector. Last year, we invested in the new strategic partnership initiative. We have invested in market development programs to increase Canada's presence on world markets and promote the use of Canadian wood in non-traditional construction to reduce emissions. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. The Honourable Member for Jonquière. Let me repeat, $24 billion for the oil and gas industry, crumbs for the other forestry industry, $71 million. We're talking about 3,500 well-paid jobs in Saguenay, like Saint-Jean. We're talking about 16,000 jobs in Quebec. The Bloc made 8 proposals to the government last week. Will the government support research and innovation? We have to allow new products like bioproducts to be developed, biofuels. We need a turnkey project. Will this be in the next budget? The Honourable Minister. Mr. Speaker, we support the forestry sector in Quebec. This fall, we announced new investments in Abitibi-Témiscamingue in order to promote new economic possibilities for Indigenous communities in the forestry sector. Communities like the Kibwek First Nation, the Témiscamingue First Nation. We announced new investments in Sherbrooke to develop new bioenergy projects. These products would transform products into biofuels.
Bird. At its recent convention, the Liberal Party endorsed the creation of a new universal basic income program. The Liberals have again shown that their priority is not our economic recovery or getting Canadians back to work. They want to reimagine our economy and expand the welfare state. The Parliamentary Budget Officer says the cost will be a staggering $93 billion a year. And who pays for this? Ordinary Canadian families, of course. To the Minister, will her budget include a universal basic income, yes or no?
Honourable Minister.
Mr. Speaker, it's hard to take lessons from a member about what happened at a party convention when his own party members voted to deny the reality of climate change. With respect to the issue at hand, from the very beginning of this pandemic, our focus has been to ensure that households and businesses can remain afloat, and we delivered benefits like the Canada Emergency Response Benefit, which has now landed on the kitchen tables of 9 million Canadian households. Mr. Speaker, as we go forward, we will continue to support Canadians to get them through this once-in-a-century emergency, and I'm glad to pass on to the honourable member that we will have the backs of Canadians no matter what it takes, as long as it takes.
Honourable member for Abbotsford.
He didn't answer my question. The middle of a pandemic is no time to introduce a massive new social program. To pay for a universal income, this government would have to increase income taxes by 47% or triple the GST. This scheme is unaffordable and would discourage Canadians from working. That's why numerous experts and economists have slammed the idea. The Prime Minister should take their advice. So to the Minister again, will her budget include any new permanent spending programs? Yes or no?
Honourable Minister.
Mr. Speaker, it's rich of the honourable member to critique the government's economic record when he was a member of the government that had the worst economic growth rate of any government in Canada's history since the Great Depression. The reality, Mr. Speaker, is because of the measures we put in place, Canadian households have remained afloat, workers have remained on payrolls. We're going to move forward with a budget that's going to continue to fight COVID-19 and set the course for a recovery that Canadians will be very proud of, and I'll be pleased to share those details with the honourable member on Monday of next week.
Answer the question.
I want to remind the honourable members that heckling is not really in the rules. It's actually against the rules in the chamber. It's definitely against the rules and downright rude over the hybrid system if you're doing it via teleconference or video conference. Just a reminder in case any of you were wondering. The honourable member for Carleton.
The government with the worst economic growth since the Great Depression is the one right across the aisle right now, and we're not part of that government. But this finance minister said that COVID is a time for epiphanies. Well, the Prime Minister had a strange and unusual for him epiphany in his letter to her. He said, you will avoid creating new permanent spending in your budget. That's right in the mandate letter. So yes or no, will the finance minister honor the Prime Minister's letter and avoid all permanent new spending?
The Honourable Minister.
Mr. Speaker, the member opposite seems afraid to embrace the idea that public investment can actually support Canadians during their time of need. I'd point him to the words of the chief economist of the International Monetary Fund, Geeta Gopinath, who indicated that it can be not just economically responsible, but fiscally sound at the same time to make public investments to support Canadians during a time of emergency. And with respect to the epiphanies he seems to be referring to, I'd remind him that there's nothing radical about trying to fight climate change while we grow the economy, to support women while we grow the economy, and to support vulnerable Canadians. I hope that he'll support the budget when he has the opportunity at the first instance next week.
Member for Carleton.
It's actually the finance minister who revealed that she had an epiphany. I guess we're going to learn what was in that epiphany. We already know what was in her mandate letter. The Prime Minister's letter said, you will avoid creating new permanent spending. Again, you will avoid creating new permanent spending. That's necessary because Canada is currently on trajectory for a massive debt crisis if we continue to borrow at this rate. So yes or no, will the finance minister honor the Prime Minister's written word to introduce no new permanent spending?
The Honourable Minister.
Mr. Speaker, I can assure the honourable member opposite that when we move forward with the budget next week, he will see decisions that will both support Canadians during their time of emergency and set the course for recovery that will ensure that Canada will prosper years from now. I can reassure him that all of the investments that will be contained in that budget will be fiscally sound and will be supporting the best interests of the Canadian in both the short term and the long term. In the meantime, I would encourage the Conservatives to get with the program and begin to recognize that the smart thing to do in a time of emergency can be to invest to support Canadians in their time of need.
The Honourable Member for Timmins, James Bay.
Doug Ford pursues attack contra.
Doug Ford is continuing his attack on Franco-Ontarian communities, and the destruction of Laurentian University is unprecedented. This institution had a mandate of promoting Francophone, Indigenous, and Anglophone education, and I remember when the Prime Minister had a cabinet meeting at Laurentian University. Why silence from the Liberals now? They should be working with the Franco-Ontarian community to protect this institution, which is vital. The Honourable Minister. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I share the concern of my colleague because what's happening now at Laurentian University is especially concerning for the Franco-Ontarian community. My thoughts are with the affected professors, teachers, and community. I had conversations with the Government of Ontario because I demanded a plan from the Ontario government to ensure that we have a strong post-secondary institution in the North. And I'll be pleased to work with my colleague to ensure that we, at the federal level, help Franco-Ontarians have access to a post-secondary institution. Thank you.
The Centre.
While average Canadians are on the brink of financial collapse, the fortunes of Canada's 44 billionaires have increased by $63 billion throughout this COVID pandemic. A modest 1% tax on personal wealth over $20 million would generate $10 billion a year to help pay for a just COVID recovery. So the question is, will this Liberal government commit to including an ultra-wealth tax in their upcoming budget to ensure that the wealthiest among us, those who made the most off of this pandemic, finally pay their fair share?
The Honourable Minister.
Mr. Speaker, I won't preempt announcements that will be shared as part of next week's budget, but I will reassure the member that from the very first time we formed government in 2015, our priority has been to support middle-class and low-income Canadians, and we've not been afraid to ask the wealthiest to pay their fair share. In fact, the very first thing we did in 2015 was raise taxes on the wealthiest 1% of Canadians and cut them for the middle class. When we put forward the Canada Child Benefit, that put more money in the pockets of 9 out of 10 Canadian families. I hope, unlike in those instances, the NDP will actually support the government as we move forward with a plan that will support Canadian households and businesses so we can transition from this pandemic towards a healthy recovery.
Member for York Centre.
Mr. Speaker, Canadians care deeply about their health and the environment. As many of us know, Canada's cornerstone environmental protection law, the Canadian Environmental Protection Act, or CEPA, has been critical in reducing air pollution from vehicles, banning asbestos, and keeping microbeads out of our water. Can the Minister of Environment and Climate Change please update this House on how our government is modernizing this critical piece of legislation to protect the health and environment of Canadians?
The Honourable Minister.
Mr. Speaker, I would like to thank the member from York Centre for her question. Canadians need a stronger environmental protection law that confronts 21st century issues with 21st century science. Every Canadian should be able to live their lives free from harmful effects of chemicals. Today, we tabled C28, Strengthening Environmental Protection for a Healthier Canada Act. Our proposal to strengthen CEPA will help us to better protect the environment, recognize a right to a healthy environment, and provide industry with certainty and predictability. Mr. Speaker, today we will ensure a healthier environment for Canada and for everyone.
L'honorable député de Mégantic-l'Érable.
The honourable member from Mégantic-l'Érable. Mr. Speaker, how far are the Prime Minister's Liberals prepared to go to favour their cronies? The Liberals have increased spending limits by $6 billion since 2015. $6 billion of taxpayer money. Spending on consultants hasn't been this high since the end of the 90s. Can the Prime Minister tell us how much of that money went into the pockets of his friends, like those from We Charity?
Le Ministre.
The Honourable Minister.
Mr. Speaker, with respect, no funds actually went from the government towards the We Charity, and the question seems a bit misguided, frankly. Mr. Speaker, the Conservatives seem more focused on trying to create political problems from the government than serving the interests of Canadians. Canadians should be reassured that from the very beginning of this pandemic, we have focused on having their back and nothing else. As we move forward with a plan to kickstart the economic recovery and continue to support us from a public health point of view, I hope we can count on the Conservatives to support our mission because it's what Canadians so richly deserve.
The Honourable Member for Mégantic-l'Érable. Mr. Speaker, we're talking about an increase of $6 billion in contracts for consultants, engineers and lawyers at the expense of Canadian taxpayers. This is spending that the former Parliamentary Budget Officer, Kevin Page, said does nothing to create the economic growth that we need. The We Charity issue, SNC Lavalin, they've shown that the Prime Minister will stop at nothing to help his buddies. He even went so far as to ask for the resignation of the first Minister of Justice, who is also a woman. Do the Liberal members detect the reek of the scandal that's floating around the Prime Minister's decisions? The Honourable Minister.
Thank you,
Mr. Speaker, and I'd like to thank my colleague for giving me the opportunity to answer this question. Unfortunately, I think this resembles a great deal like a conspiracy theory. My colleague knows full well the emergencies that we are currently facing, and we have to focus our energy on this and go get the talent we need. We are investing in Canadians to ensure that we can move on quickly through the pandemic.
The Honourable Leader of the Opposition.
Mr. Speaker, earlier in question period, the Health Minister accused my colleague from Calgary of trying to scare Canadians when she asked a reasonable question about the AstraZeneca vaccine, and her question was based on a release from the Public Health Agency. The Conservatives have been saying that vaccines, rapid tests, and information are the key tools in this pandemic, and this government has been late on all three of those tools. Rather than attack my colleague and evade answering the question, I'll ask the Minister of Health again. Will she be asking her officials to review the use of AstraZeneca based on the latest release from the Public Health Agency? Yes or no?
The Honourable Minister.
Mr. Speaker, every step of the way, we see the Conservatives play a dangerous game with Canadians. On one hand, asking for rapid tests, on the other hand, asking for vaccines, faster vaccines, and then using a fear of those very same tools to scare Canadians. I will not back down from my comments, Mr. Speaker. We have world-class regulators who have one goal in mind, Mr. Speaker, and that's to keep Canadians safe. Vaccines, they save lives, they prevent the spread, and I hope my colleagues will ensure that they are encouraging their members to get vaccinated when it is their time.
The Honourable Member for Kenora.
Mr. Speaker, yesterday I spoke to the chief of Pikangikum First Nation in my riding about the urgent need for policing resources in their community. This issue had previously put the health of residents in jeopardy, but it continues to pose a safety risk for residents. Chief Owen has told me that RCMP officers would be welcome in the community as an interim measure until an alternative policing solution can be found. However, the Minister of Public Safety has failed to act. Mr. Speaker, will the Minister listen to the Chief and mobilize RCMP resources to support the people of Pikangikum?
The Honourable Minister.
Yeah, thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. And unfortunately, the member's question reveals his complete misunderstanding of the jurisdiction of the Ontario government to provide policing services in that community. I would refer him to the Police Services Act of Ontario. And we are working very closely in support of that community to ensure that medical services are being provided and that the security exists for the delivery of those services. And at the same time, we are supporting the Ontario government to fulfill its responsibility to provide adequate and effective policing services in that community as they are required to do.
The Honourable Member for Saint-Hyacinthe-Bagotte. Ottawa is paying a high price to compensate Air Canada for its grounded planes. It should have at least as much consideration for the 40,000 men and women in Quebec who built those planes. Aerospace is our main export sector, and there's no new orders. Skilled workers are leaving the sector. Expertise is at risk. Federal inaction is destroying what it took generations to build. Monday, in the budget, will there finally be something for the aerospace industry? The Honourable Minister. Mr. Speaker, last night's announcement is great news for Quebec and Quebecers. Air Canada will be reimbursing people's plane tickets. They will be able to buy pieces for their planes. And that's going to relaunch local activities and regional routes. This is good news. And yet the Bloc doesn't seem to like it. The Honourable Member for Saint-Hyacinthe-Bagotte. Mr. Speaker, what the Bloc does not like is confusion. They're confusing aeronautics with air transport. Those are two different things. There's 3 places around the world where there's the know-how and the industrial network necessary to build a plane from A to Z. 3 places in the world, including Montreal. And yet Canada is the only country among those major players that doesn't have a strategic aerospace policy. Quebec is sitting at the table with global players, and no one seems to realize it here in Ottawa. Monday is the budget. Will we finally see a smart, comprehensive aerospace policy, yes or no? The Honourable Minister. Mr. Speaker, we've always been there for the aerospace industry and will continue to be there for that industry that offers high-quality, high-paying jobs. Yesterday's agreement clearly indicates that Air Canada will be able to buy its parts and its planes here in Quebec. That's here in Quebec. So what is it about that agreement that the Bloc Québécois doesn't like? The Honourable Member for Stevenson, Richmond East.
Mr. Speaker, last year the government promised to help students by engaging in corruption and scandal that led to the catastrophic failure of the Canada Student Service Grant and the resignation of the country's ministers of finance. I'd like to find out, how does the government intend to disappoint and hurt our Canadian students this year?
Honourable Minister.
Mr. Speaker, I want to first of all just say the COVID pandemic has impacted all Canadians, disproportionately certain segments, and students are no exception. And I appreciate the member's question, and I want all students to know that our government, under the leadership of this Prime Minister, will be there for you. And that's exactly why we came out with the Canada Emergency Student Benefit. That's why we removed interest from Canada Student Loans so that you would not be in repayment. I want students to know that we've created jobs through the Canada Summer Jobs Program. We will continue working on your behalf because you deserve it. You are not only the leaders of tomorrow, you are the leaders of today, and this government's got your back. Thank you.
The Honourable Member for Oro Springwater, Medonte.
Barry Springwater, Ormonde. Don't forget the good citizens of Barrie. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. We are all aware many Canadians are struggling to make ends meet during this pandemic. This Liberal government is failing Canadians and the residents of Barrie, Springwater, Ormonde. My staff have been flooded with complaints from residents who have been denied EI and are unable to access CERB. When an application is made for EI, it triggers a flag with CRA. This flag prevents further processing of the CERB applications. Many of these applicants have been waiting months without any income. Can the Prime Minister advise this House and my constituents when he will fix this issue?
The Honourable Minister.
Mr. Speaker, I can assure the member that we are absolutely on top of this issue. Obviously, we want to make sure from an integrity point of view that Canadians aren't receiving two benefits at the same time, but we know how hard it is for Canadians to wait to see which benefit they should be getting. We've got teams working together with CRA and ESDC on this. It's not taking the time it did at the beginning when this problem was first identified, and I'm happy to provide the member with more information if he wants, but I can assure him this is a big top priority for me and my team. Thank you.
The Honourable Member for Saskatoon Grasswood.
Well, thank you, Mr. Speaker. You know, this month, Canadians were hit with a 33% tax increase in the carbon tax. Now, media reports suggest that the Liberals are planning to implement a home equity tax. In fact, the CMHC is already studying elimination of the capital gains exemption on principal residence. This is the last thing that families need in their life savings to be wiped out overnight. Why are the Liberals increasing taxes on Canadians in the middle of this pandemic?
The Honourable Minister.
Mr. Speaker, the Conservatives refuse to take no for an answer. The Government of Canada is not looking at charging capital gains tax on primary residences. This is not under consideration by our government. Any suggestion otherwise is false. In fact, we've been working hard to make home ownership more affordable for middle-class Canadians with our first-time home buyers incentive. The Conservatives, time and again, try to suggest otherwise, but they're engaging in falsehood.
The Honourable Member for Scarborough Centre.
Mr. Speaker, we know that the COVID-19 pandemic has worsened already existing challenges that seniors face around social isolation, which can be harmful both to physical and mental health. Last year, with help from New Horizons for Seniors program, organizations in my riding such as HoC, Multicultural and Community Services were able to run programs to help with this. HoC's program, Seniors Together, brought together seniors and younger people for online activities such as yoga classes and meditation, as well as intergenerational discussions and art activities. Could the Minister for Seniors tell us why it is so important to support the mental health of Canadian seniors during the pandemic and beyond, and further actions the government is taking? Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
The Honourable Minister.
Mr. Speaker, my honourable colleague from Scarborough is right. From Scarborough Centre is right. As a result of the pandemic, seniors have experienced significant negative impacts. To help combat the isolation that they faced during the pandemic, we invested millions more into the New Horizons for Seniors program. In total, we've funded 5,000 community support projects across the country during the pandemic to help seniors stay connected and supported. I want to thank the organizations like those in my colleagues' riding who stepped up to serve seniors with projects during this extraordinary, challenging time. Together, we can make the difference in seniors' lives, and I look forward to the opposition supporting Bill C-14 to get it through to the Senate as soon as possible. Thank you.
Before going to the next question, I just want to remind the honourable members who are joining us virtually, the arm on your headset, if it could be somewhere between your nose and your upper lip or your lower lip and the chin, it just makes it so much easier for the interpreters and your colleagues who can hear exactly what you're saying, because everyone wants to hear every word. The honourable member for New Brunswick Southwest.
Mr. Speaker, the Fisheries Minister has told maritime fishing families that lobster fishing by Indigenous communities under the Moderate Livelihood will follow existing seasons, regulations, and enforcement rules all set by DFO. Yet the Liberal MP for Sydney Victoria has said this is wrong, that the Fisheries Minister announcement is only an interim measure for this 1 year, and First Nations will eventually be allowed by the Liberal government to set their own seasons and rules. Who's right?
Honourable Minister.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and I want to thank the member for the question. Mr. Speaker, we recognize that First Nations have a right to a moderate livelihood fishery. This was affirmed by the Supreme Court of Canada. The measures that we have put in place for this year are flexible and allow fishers to get out on the water right now as we work towards longer-term agreements. Mr. Speaker, these are ongoing negotiations with First Nations communities, and I look forward to having agreements in place. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
The Honourable Member for West Nova.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. And my question, of course, to the Minister of Fisheries as well. Let me be sure Canadians understand this. The Liberal MP for Sydney, Victoria is correct when he said the minister's pronouncement is only an interim measure. Clarity is extremely important here. Is the minister telling us flexible, moderate livelihood plans will be established by each First Nation outside existing lobster seasons and will not be enforced by DFO after this interim plan is done?
Honourable Minister.
Mr. Speaker, I'd like to ask my honourable colleagues to please stop spreading, malicious rumors, basically. These are ongoing negotiations we are having with First Nations communities so that we can get to a long-term agreement. First Nations have a right to a Supreme Court affirmed right to a moderate livelihood fishery. We are working with them to make sure that they are able to exercise that right. And in the interim, Mr. Speaker, we have put measures in place that allow the moderate livelihood fishery to take place this year. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
The Honourable Member for Lévis-Lotbinière. Mr. Speaker, the Minister of National Defence was informed of workplace violence at the Valcartier Base Barracks a year ago. An internal investigation was requested. There was no cooperation from National Defence. Mr. Speaker, can the Minister tell us more about these cases of violence in the workplace? The Honourable Minister.
Mr. Speaker, we take all allegations of harassment very seriously. I was not aware of this particular issue itself. However, I will look into it and get back to the member. Thank you.
The Honourable Member for Etobicoke Centre.
Merci, Monsieur le Président. Monsieur le Président,
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. The current pandemic has reminded us just how much in Etobicoke Centre and elsewhere, how important the environment is to ensure the health of our families. This morning, the government tabled a bill that would ensure greater protection against toxic products. Can the Minister of Environment and Climate Change explain to this House and to Canadians how this new bill will help keep our communities healthy?
Le Ministre.
The Honourable Minister.
Remercier le député de Etobicoke.
I would like to thank the member for Etobicoke Centre for the question. Mr. Speaker, we have kept our promise to reinforce the Canadian Environmental Protection Act in order to implement measures that protect Canadians against toxic substances. Our bill will help us to better protect the environment, recognize the right to a healthy environment, and much more. Together, we will ensure that Canada is healthier for our families and for our communities.
The Honourable Member for North Island Powell River.
Mr. Speaker, Indigenous Services is taking up to 2 years to process applications for Indian status, while a Canadian passport is processed within 16 weeks. Status cards are necessary for First Nations people to access health supports, including vaccinations. If the process is so complicated that it can take over 2 years to figure it out, I would say there is something wrong with the system. I have a constituent who's been waiting for over 3 years. This is unacceptable, and this is systemic racism. When will the Liberals stop hiding behind the bureaucracy and talking points and actually fix it?
Honourable Minister.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. The member will note that this government has made significant investments in accelerating the processing times in and around status. The cases can vary from one person to another, and if the member has any particular case that she would like to advance to the ministry, I'd be more than glad to look at it and pass it on to my team. Thank you.
The Honourable Member for Fredericton.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. The pandemic has made it clear that the financial security of millions of Canadians is hanging by a thread. The economy and the systems supporting it are not working for everyone. The wealth of Canadian billionaires skyrocketed during the pandemic, while millions, including children and people with disabilities, still live below the poverty line. For months, this government has been making promises that no Canadian will be left behind. But these promises feel empty when we see a refusal to hike the capital gains tax and a reticence to impose a significant wealth tax. Will the upcoming budget be a pathway to a fair and more prosperous Canada for all? Or will the government continue to allow corporations and their shareholders to build back better on the backs of Canadians? Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
The Honourable Minister.
Mr. Speaker, I'd like to take this opportunity to thank the honourable member for her question and for her advocacy for Canada's most vulnerable. While I won't preempt the decisions that will be outlined in the upcoming budget, I will reassure her that from the very first day we formed government, our focus has been to support middle-class and low-income Canadians. The very first thing we did when we formed government was raise taxes on the 1% so we could cut taxes for the middle class. When we advanced the Canada Child Benefit, we put more money in the pocket of 9 out of 10 Canadian families and stopped sending checks to millionaires. Mr. Speaker, the pandemic has shown that we need to continue to support the vulnerable, and Canadians can rest assured we will have their back as long as it takes, no matter what it takes.
Unfortunately, that's all the time we have for question period today. Nous avons un rappel au règlement. Problème.
Excuse me, I'm going to interrupt you again. I believe there was a technical issue. Has it been solved now? Yes. All right. We have the sound now, so I'm going to let you start over from the beginning. The Honourable Member for La Pointe-du-Lille. Mr. Speaker, there's been consultation among the parties, and I think you will find unanimous consent for the following motion. That this House express its anxiety over the closure of 28 French language programs and the layoff of 100 professors at Laurentian University in Sudbury. That it re-express its solidarity with the Franco-Ontarian community. That it remind everyone of the important role of French language education for the vitality of Acadian and Franco-Ontarian populations. Thank you. All those opposed to the honourable members moving the motion will please say nay.
D'accord.
Very well. The House has heard the terms of the motion. All those opposed to the motion will please say nay.
Adopté.
Carried.
We have a point of order from the honourable member for Elmwood-Transcona as well.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. As you know, there's been a fair bit of election speculation on the Hill lately, and the pandemic gives rise to legitimate questions about the advisability of an election. And the Procedure and House Affairs Committee has released a report with a recommendation that speaks directly to that issue. As such, I'm hoping that if you seek it, you'll find unanimous consent on the floor for the following motion. That notwithstanding any standing order, special order, or usual practice of the House, at the expiry of the time provided for private members' business later today, the House revert back to the rubric motions for the purpose of considering a motion to concur in the 12th report of the Standing Committee on Procedure and House Affairs, presented on Friday, February 26, 2021, and at the conclusion of the time provided for debate, when no member rises to speak,
whichever is earlier. All questions necessary to dispose of the motion shall be put without further debate or amendment, provided that if a recorded division is requested, it shall stand deferred until the conclusion of oral questions at the next sitting day. Thank you.
All those opposed to the honourable member moving the motion will please say nay. Well, I'm afraid we don't have unanimous consent. The honourable member for Nanaimo Ladysmith is rising on a point of order.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. There have been discussions among the parties, and if you seek it, I believe you'll find unanimous consent for the following motion. That notwithstanding any standing order, special order, or usual practice of the House until Wednesday, June 23rd, 2021, independent members and members of non-recognized parties be allowed to ask a total of 8 questions per week during oral questions, including 2 on Mondays, Tuesdays, and Thursdays, and 1 on Wednesdays and Fridays. It being understood that these questions do not impact the amount of oral questions already shared amongst recognized parties. Thank you.
All those opposed to the honourable member moving the motion will please say nay. I'm afraid we don't have unanimous consent on that either. Orders of the day.
Orders of the day, Government Orders, Government Bills Commons, resuming debate at third reading stage of Bill C-14, Economic Statement Implementation Act 2020.
Okay, the honourable member for Carleton has 4 minutes remaining in his speech, or for question period. Okay. Questions et commentaires. Questions. The honourable parliamentary secretary to the government House Leader has a question.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Speaker. You know, Bill C-14 was something that's been around now for quite a while. In fact, the Minister of Finance, the Deputy Prime Minister, talked about the economic statement back in November. The bill was introduced for the first time in December. Members started debating it, and it took us a few weeks ago where we shamed the Conservative Party to ultimately allow the bill to get through second reading.